first of all, we really do appreciate you taking time to be here. We know what a year this has been for everyone. And so we really, we don't take for granted that people hop onto these Zooms. We know we've been Zoomed out and overworked for a very long time. And so I guess why we keep offering these, why we keep pushing these is particularly because of that, because of all the year we've had. And if you look at it, it's not just a year. It's been a hard time for public education for a very long time in California and across this nation. And in some ways, it's getting worse with attacks on us and our students, and particularly on us right now. And so we're uplifting this community schools model as a model worthy of really struggling around. It is a democratic, at its core, it's a democratic bottom-up model where we're able to connect with our power as union members, as workers, shoulder to shoulder with our students and the families we serve. And that's rare that we get that opportunity to do. But we also know, many of us who've been in education for a very long time, we know because these windows around this stuff close very quickly. And we know that this grant is this is an unprecedented amount of money of $2.8 billion that's being invested in community schools in California, with the potential in California, we could double the amount of schools in the entire nation, and just with California schools, if this all goes according to how we hope it goes. But we also know that nothing that good comes easy. And there's going to be tons of struggles, including our own being wiped out and overwhelmed, our struggles of connecting with our members around this, but more importantly, the top-down nature of public education, the top-down nature of administrators that really poison so much of these programs. And so this is something we know we're gonna have to bring our fight, our struggle, and our power as a union to really push to get a model that we want. So there's going to be a number of the state is doing some trainings on this, or more webinars. I think there's another one perhaps tomorrow. We could put that information for your district to find out about, or you to join as well. But we really want to have some space here to do two things. We want to give you some information about the grant as much as we know. And there's still some, I want to be upfront with you, there's still some questions. This grant is, like many grants, has a lot of questions, and it's being rolled out in a way that's a real challenge for a lot of us right now. But we're going to need to continue to push through that in the meantime. But besides going over the grant with one of our staffers doing that, we also want to have some local leaders who are part of this process and have really invested some time and some equity and some energy into really uplifting this community schools model. They've been working on it for a few months, kind of in preparation for this money. Actually, they do it before there was even going to be the state money. So we just want to, if there's one thing that we can bring to this is the quote, the real energy around power, building power. And we want to have them talk to you about how they've done that. And so, and by the way, you'll notice about our presidents who are presenting today. We've had presidents in all of our webinars, and they're not just the biggest, largest urbans who in some ways are doing some incredible community schools work. But we're also really coming to you with suburban locals, with smaller locals, with locals of all size that really are developing their own models to make this work. And so today, the first person we're going to have up to talk about this work is Courtney from Chula Vista Educators. And Courtney's going to share with us about her own struggle and her own way of really positioning her local to be in the best position to really influence this program. Take it away, Courtney.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Green. I'm the Vice President of Chula Vista Educators. Our district is an elementary-only district in southern San Diego, and we have about 1,300 members. And we have been part of the NEA Midwest Academy for Community Schools for 2 years. So we've been working towards community schools even before this RFA came out, but now we are even more excited about getting the funding from the state. So through the academy, we've had about 13 members trained in internal organizing and able to work to increase the power at all of our sites. We also received a grant from NEA to continue our community schools work this year. We had members apply to become community schools fellows who would do site visits, hold one-on-one conversations with our site reps and our building action team leaders about what's working well at their sites and what they would change about their sites. And gathering all of this data was really going to be building the platform for our community schools' goals and visions. However, like a bit of what David was sharing, this year ended up, going way differently than we were expecting. And so we really had to put on hold all the work that we were going to do with our fellows because of sub shortages and how hard it was to get our fellows released. So due to these major changes happening this year, we decided to make a big pivot. And actually just last week, we decided to change from our grant money to fully fund myself as VP to be released to solely focus on our internal organizing and our coalition building. We're still having our fellows do site visits whenever they can. And this came at a good time, right when the RFA was released. So now our main focus is on completing the community schools planning grant from the state. And we have a small team of union leaders and district admin and some community partners who are beginning to write the RFA grant together that we'll be working on over the next 2 weeks. We're really fortunate that we've had a supportive school board and superintendent. However, we have had to work to build support from our district office admin. Our district has said they're committed to building the community schools, but they've really been wrestling with the joint leadership aspect and releasing control. So we know that our planning grant is what we're going to be working on next, but then we're also going to be bringing a community school steering committee resolution to the school board to ensure that the process continues to have joint leadership. So I'm really grateful now to be on full-time release so that we can really get the ball rolling and work on building our community schools in Chula Vista. Thanks.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you for really talking about all the efforts you've gone in, not just allowing the district to write their own planning grant on their own, but really demanding and working and pushing so you all and the community are there at that as well. Thank you. And by the way, later we'll have opportunity for questions for our folks as well as Q&A about the actual grant itself. The next speaker we're going to have is not uncommon. Unfortunately, as we travel the state, we go to a lot of places where we hear leaders saying, oh, my district already tells me we have a community school. And we say, do you know anything about it? No, I know nothing about it. The district does it. And they brought in someone else to do it, some administrator, but we know nothing about it, but they're calling it a community school. So our next, David Navar is our next speaker, who's the president of Montebello and is in that same situation and is actually talking about how they've been wrestling as a local about really reclaiming that and really coming to the table this time and not allowing the district themselves to move along with this.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you all having me here. I'm gonna have to correct you though. It wasn't the district who let me know we had a community school here in our district. I'm a new president this year, and I'm immersing myself in the community schools model. So I go home, I'm talking to my wife, telling her all about community schools, and my wife said, "Oh, you have one already in your district at Montebello High School in Montebello Unified. We put it there. LACO put it there." When I talk to the board members and I'm telling them about community schools, they're not saying yes, we already have one. They're saying, what's a community school? So it really goes to the heart of a challenge that we have, which is just telling you that story, I think conveys the fact that that collaborative leadership model or that pillar has not been at all exercised. If the union president doesn't know about it, is learning from his wife, if the board members don't know, then there's a problem. And I don't want to be negative about LACO Community School at Montebello High School. They put 2 people there. They're fantastic. They do great wraparound services. It's just, I cannot say enough about the work that they do. They do a great job, and they have a fantastic one pillar model, but that's what it is. It's one pillar. As you learn more about community schools, you'll learn that there are 4 or 6 pillars, and they're all essential. They're all very important, and we need to have all of them. And in learning that we had one, I tried to invite myself to some events and try to partner with the community school that we have there. They're doing great work. I can learn from them. I think we need to build on what they have there, but our students deserve not just one pillar, they deserve them all. And they deserve educational justice. And that's the work that we're trying to do in our local. The more you learn about community schools, you learn that it's about building power, building organizational power. And our unions must do that so that we can make community schools work and we can bring educational justice to our students. What we've done here in Montebello is we started with an educational justice resolution that our representative council passed, and I've communicated with the board. They're receptive. I don't know how your boards are. They say yes, they say we agree, but then when it's time to act is where we're having those challenges. And I think, again, it's incumbent upon us as unions to make sure that the work gets done. After that, we sent a group of core organizers, about 15 of our organizing leadership team, to some trainings on organizing. And from there, we built on that model, and we sent a group of, we had about 120 of our members. We are a 1,200 member local. We had about 120 of our members sign up. We had attendance in the 80s and 90s to a larger organizing training that we've had a 5-part organizing training that's going very well. And we're starting to see some of those, the benefits of building power, of organizing. At our last board meeting, we had teachers and parents at one side organize and go and speak to the board and demand that they honor the class size commitments that the board made at the beginning of the year. We had another side organize against becoming a district dependent charter school. But there's a lot of work. It's a long process. We have much to do, including, and what I want to do is I want to write that application for the and then go over to the board and to the district and say, here's my rough draft. What do you think? Because I think it's important that we include all pillars and we make sure that we have certain things in place, because if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. And it's going to be top down. It's going to be Lake's community school at Montebello High School, not an authentic, full, transformative community school that's going to deliver educational justice for our students.
Thank you, David. And so we'll open it up for a couple questions. We're all going to have some time. So the rest of the agenda is going to look, it's going to proceed where we're going to have now Efrain in a minute come on, and he's one of our staffers who's really knowledgeable about the program itself and the RFA, the request for application process. And then we're going to also have some time for some breakout time later for you all to talk amongst each other and get some feedback. But we did want to have some time for you to ask these great folks some questions while they're here. I will say a couple things before we open it up too. And if you have questions, maybe you can just either say stack in the chat, or if you want to even write down your question. And I think our staff member, Monica Tamarat, who's been taking the lead on this, will really help follow up. I just want a couple terms that were used. David mentioned ELECO. That's a beast. And so all of us in Southern California, that's LA County. So sometimes the counties themselves have tried to do this. That's what he's saying. They're trying to take ownership of it. The other thing is he mentioned some pillars. If you go on our website, cta.org/community schools, you will see a bunch of resources, including the 6 pillars. One pillar that's often used is it's just called the wraparound services. But your folks here, Courtney and David, have talked much more broadly around democratic, around curriculum, around decision-making, around much broader issues, discipline, all kinds of issues that there are other pillars. And so I want to have you be familiar with that. While you're there, you'll also see, I think Courtney also referenced getting an MOU with the district, or even a board resolution. We have some model MOUs and some model resolutions that you can use. And the last thing I will say is these folks have both had like a year or even more of a head start and been working really hard on this. But our intention of CTA is if you apply for this is to really give you some support as well. We're really developing the infrastructure to make that happen. So with that, I just want to give you that little bit more context, but let's see if there have any questions that you all have for them before we then go to Efrain.
Recording and
Any questions, folks? Any comments? Anything? How does this resonate, their work? I see we have Claudia Batista. Would you like to go first, Claudia?
Sure. I actually just messaged David too. I'm in the same boat as David. I found out that we were a community school. And again, I mean, it's almost like listening to the exact thing that happened. We have for 2 years, this 2 amazing people at our school that are working with the mental health issues that have happened because of COVID. That's been the focus. But A, I did not know it existed. Like I did know that that was a community schools thing. And B, I echo what David said, which is we would love to also have some funding for more social justice. We want to detract our English classes at the high school, and we need some time to be able to do that. So it's so important for us to work collaboratively. And if David could speak a little bit about how his journey has been so far in trying to work with them and what he has done, that would be great for, at least for me. I don't know if anyone else is in the same boat.
Sure. We know what we're focusing our efforts on are building organizational power, and it's all about organizing. We need to organize as a union so that and we plan on having community schools here in our district. That's the plan going forward. They mentioned the funds that are available. So we want to make sure that we are prepared to wield the power that we have, that we can organize ourselves as members, as a union, but also work with parents so that we can institute all 4 or 6 pillars of community schools. So that's what we've been doing. We've been sending our people to trainings on organizing and developing them, our members, as organizers so that they're better prepared and that we can do this work. And it pays dividends, not just in community schools, but really in everything. It's about building power and making sure that we, the professionals, the educators, are the ones that are making the decisions that are going to best influence and impact.
Great. It looks like we have Ian from Pomona who would like to raise a question as well for the panelists. Yeah, and you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. How you guys doing? In our district, we have 2 of our own community schools, Pomona Unified School District schools, as well as 1 LACO school. So my question is this: what the hell is LACO doing in this business?
Yeah.
Why is LACO establishing community schools and not districts? I mean, it's weird to me. They shouldn't be in this.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that we're really trying to do with this effort. And as David is saying, a lot of counties, with Ian referencing, a lot of counties have really gone into the community schools business and really done it. And the farther away you get from the schools, the more top down and disconnected it is from the community. We believe the schools are a community and we need to be with the parent. And so that's something, the only way we deal with that is the way our folks are talking about here, is by really organizing around it and really kind of taking this back. Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Ian.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Maybe we'll take just one more and then we'll go on. And then again, you will have some time to talk later too. Let's go to Tammy Reyna from San Diego County.
Hi. Yeah, I would suggest, David, that our situation is identical. I'm with the San Diego County Office of Education, and it's the same thing. Apparently, we have community schools, so we've already accessed that funding. So now we're into the implementation stage, yet we've already received all of the funding, and the schools don't really exist. They've taken the funding and they've just applied it to things like we've gotten counselors and things like that. But there was no community feedback. We didn't know what was happening. It happened to us. My question actually is, how do you roll back the hands of time? I mean, if you already have the funding, how do you then reroute it, reorganize it, get out there, network with communities, with teachers, like really follow the pillars once it's already been done?
I would say we have to, I mean, look at the good, you know, we're at where we are where we're at. And so in my situation, we have this community school, it's called the community school. The one pillar, they're doing really well. So let's build on that. We have to make it authentic, and it's got to be, it's really grassroots organizing and input and looking at students and asking, you know, there's a long process that we have to go through to get to community schools. We have to start at that step and take what they have done and build on it. That's the way I try to see it. You know, I don't want to tear down what they have. They're doing some very good work, but it isn't everything, and it's not everything our students deserve. We need to start at step one, and that's where we're starting. I understand that it's going to be a long process, a learning process. We're going to make mistakes along the way. But we have to, there is no other option. We have to take these steps forward if we are going to improve and our services to students. And there
I
is
have a
no
comment I'd like to add also that even though we don't have any designated community schools, we've still been in some disagreement about what is a community school. So when the district is looking at it as just that one pillar of wraparound services, something that really helped us was last week, Anaheim invited us to come and visit one of their official community schools. And we brought some of our district administrators with us, and they were able to really see the difference of what they were envisioning a community school to be and what was really happening in Anaheim. So in particular, they shared with us about how they did their needs and assets assessments to see what kind of classes students were really interested in. And we were able to observe their steering committee, which was led by their union president. And they had parents and community members on the steering committee. And it was really eye-opening for our district admin to really see what it looks like to have a shared leadership and to not have it be just wraparound services. So for us, we sought out, you know, what is the closest community school to us of our own, the 4 pillars definition of what a community school is. And then we're able to go and visit them.
Right, and that's going to be a real model. As you notice, as Courtney's referenced, Tammy, we're uplifting every time, is having our member leaders who have been involved with this kind of lead these discussions. I know you've been in a little bit of conversation with Kyle Weinberg from SDEA. That's another great model where, you know, you could we got to learn from each other, because these county folks, these bureaucrats, they learn from each other the worst practices. We got to learn from each other best practices and kind of uplift them. So I want to thank our panelists, and hopefully they'll stick around. They'll probably be in one of the breakout groups. So you can dialogue with them, but also with each other in one of these breakout groups in a little bit. But first, we want to do our best to at least give you some information about the grant itself. Again, I never want to create the impression that this is a CTA program. If it was, it would be run very differently. This is a state program. We're trying our best to really intervene and really support us. We feel the best way to do that is by building power, so we all have a shot at kind of correcting some of this stuff. But we want to at least have some information from Efrain, who's going to basically explain his understanding right now of the grant process that came out recently. Thank you, Efrain.
Thank you, David. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm actually going to share the actual RFA. I'm just going to go through and kind of highlight some pieces that I think are super key. And if you haven't seen this yet, it was released on March 1st, and just want to kind of quickly call out the due date is April 1st. So there's not much time between now and then. This one specifically is for the planning grants. So again, it goes back to the language of if you are an LEA, which is essentially a district or a county or or charter school, if you're an LEA that reaches the 50% unduplicated or higher, then you qualify to apply for a planning grant. You're going to see top of the screen here, it says cohort 1. There's going to be 2 rounds of planning grants, one now and then one later on. So if folks aren't ready and they want to wait to do this, then they could do it later on. One thing I will say that there's a finite amount of money. So if you are ready to do it, then I would say jump in as soon as possible. If you need time to build and kind of build the power, then if you have to wait. But just understand that there's a finite pot of money, even though it is $3 billion. Keep that one in mind. Couple of the big picture pieces again, planning grants are for folks who do not have existing schools. There's a lot of confusion right now on what does it mean if you are, say, Pomona, or you are Santa Monica, Malibu, and you're currently funded for something via the LACO funding, or in Alameda County, they have 5 districts they're working with. That's currently a question that we're pushing really hard to get a very clear answer on. To date, it's been very ambiguous and it's very convoluted. So we're pushing really hard to say, hey, give us a straight answer. Does this count or not? Are they eligible for planning grant, or do they have to go for implementation grant, and get that messaging across? So we're working on that, and we'll make sure to share it as soon as possible. Couple of quick things. Again, if you have questions, please pop them in or chime in, and we'll go. I'm just going to go through and kind of highlight some of the key pieces here. And again, if you have questions, just let me know. So the first thing was due date April 1st. This application is not like a super intense one for the planning grants in terms of it's not going to take, hours upon hours upon hours to fill out, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, which means that you could likely have your district admin jump in, do it on their own, and just do it in the back of their office and be able to get done within a couple hours, which obviously we don't want that. So keep an eye on that piece, but also it's not going to be something that's going to take, the full 4 weeks to get done, or, by now the 3 weeks. A lot of the overview pieces we touched on before, so I'm not going to drill too deeply into that unless folks have questions, but I just want to jump over to page 6 and highlight a couple of pieces. The grant information here, this is cohort 1. There's obviously a fair amount of money that's going to be going out. One thing that is a requirement in the statute is that if you receive a planning grant, they have to reserve implementation grant funds for you. And that's why I'm saying if you can apply in this first round, apply in the first round, because then they have to hold those funds. There's going to be, for implementation grants, 3 different rounds. There's going to be one now, one in the fall, and one later on. And every time a round happens, there's going to be money that's going to be eaten up, whether it's planning grant dollars being eaten up and then implementation grant dollars being held for them, or this first round of implementation grant folks who are going to be going in for these dollars. And while, again, the funding pot is big, there are going to be, there is a limit to this whole thing. Keep this in mind as well. Competitive priorities. While the initial qualification to apply for this is going to be that at least 50% unduplicated, plus some other pieces around expulsion, all those things can help you qualify. But competitive priorities, when it comes to the individual schools, will be at least 80%. Okay, so keep that piece in mind as you're going through and trying to get this done. We expect the planning grant and for round 1 to not be oversubscribed. So we don't expect those competitive priorities to come into play in this first round, but they very likely could come into play when it comes to round 2, which will be later on, obviously six months to a year from now, and also for the later rounds of implementation grants. So we do expect it to come into play eventually. So please keep that in mind as we go through it. This next one here on page 7, there was some pieces that were added in here in terms of rural schools, so small and rural schools. So if you do count smaller rural, you are able to jump in with some of the priority pieces there. So and that's the whole point of that, is to expand access across the entire state to make sure folks have access to it. One thing that people have really asked a lot of questions on, you're going to see it here, the funding levels. The planning grants cannot exceed $200,000. And you can choose to do a 2-year time period. So if you wanted to, you could do the whole 22-23 school year and 23-24 school year if you wanted to. and then work to create an implementation plan to transition over to implementation grant pieces. Or if you wanted to, you could decide that we're just going to take 1 year of planning and then transition for 2024 over to implementation grants for our schools and get going from there. Just keep that in mind. That's not per school, that's per LEA, so per your district. So if you're like for Courtney at Chula Vista, they can get up to $200,000. One thing in this that's going to say, hey, you get to build a budget that is realistic. And the bottom line is that if you're building a budget for $200,000 for 1 year, and part of that budget is to hire a community schools coordinator, that's going to eat up right there, probably what, 120, 130, something like that, probably a little bit more depending on the level of the person. And that will leave over some leftover money for some engagement pieces to get your steering committee in place, et cetera. So we don't really foresee people having a problem creating a budget that justifies the $200,000. Just make sure that we're smart about it in the district. Just don't let the district mess that up. So that's going to be really important. But I would imagine most folks are going to go in for a planning grant, and even though they have 2 years, they're probably just going to use 1 year and then jump into implementation right away. So just keep that in mind because, again, the funding pot is finite. The eligibility requirements, this piece, again, the 50% unduplicated, keep that in mind. If your LEA has higher than state average dropouts, higher rates of suspension, expulsion, and higher rates of homelessness, foster youth, justice, and involved students, just keep those pieces in mind. Then the qualifier is going to have be, for most LEAs, is going to be the 50% one, so just keep that piece there. Some folks have asked, what happens if our LEA is not at the 50% duplicated level, but we have schools that are at the higher 80%? At that point, then the LEA can apply on behalf of that school if they hit 2 or more of the criteria that we've highlighted above. So say the school is over the 80% and they have a higher dropout rate or suspension rate, then they would then qualify to do this grant and to get a planning grant and move forward there. So hopefully that all makes sense. And then these details aren't going to be as important, but folks can read on those things on their own if they'd like and jump in. Within the RFA, they are going to call out the allowable activities and costs. There's going to be, it's a pretty big laundry list of things. And to David's point earlier, some folks, in terms of the pillars, the integrated support services, they're really, knocking that out of the park. Great. But there's so many other things between the community engagement, the family community engagement, collaborative leadership, and the expanded learning time and opportunities. Keep in mind, these 4 pillars are throughout this whole RFA. So if your district is not incorporating those 4 pillars, you can really, push them hard on those pieces. And I'll show you later on the rubric that's going to be within the RFA. So we'll keep pushing from there. One thing that is going to be key on this here, page 11, non-allowable activities and costs. If you all see that top bullet, it cannot supplant existing services and funds. So please take that hammer that they gave you in the RFA and let's use it to make sure that we're not supplanting existing services, which I would imagine a lot of folks are going to try to do with this money. It's going to be the same thing for the other pieces as well. And then the rest of it obviously is in there. Don't buy gift cards for yourself and all those kind of normal pieces. I'm gonna say keep jumping. There's accountability pieces within it. They're pretty vague, the reality. So and for the most part, these are measures that are already in the LCAP or already on your dashboard. So it shouldn't be anything that's too out of the ordinary. Obviously, we're not a big fan of boiling things down to one data point. But just keep that in mind as you're going through this process. There will need to be some program outcome measures and some school level outcome measures that folks are looking at and kind of tracking over time. But again, via the LCAP, via the dashboard, that's pretty much already happening for most folks. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal. All right, I'm going to keep jumping here. The program deliverables. So this piece right here is important. You're going to have to create a mid-project progress report, mid-project expenditure report, and then your end-of-project pieces. And the key thing here is for the end of project report, you're going to have to be able to present your community school implementation plan, which includes all the following pieces. So how are you committed to the pillars? Which schools are you going to work on? How are you going to handle all these things? And this right here is something that we fought really hard for, to make sure that all these folks who are getting planning grants, which the CDE and state board wanted the planning grants to have a low threshold, a low bar to achieve and to obtain. And then here's going to be where we have the higher bar to say, hey, no messing around. Are you committed to doing this work? And if you are, give us the plan that's going to show you're committed, and make sure everyone has access to that, because then our locals can then say, hey, you committed to this. They're giving you $2 million a year or whatever it is, and we're going to get this work done and handle it. So you will help to be a part of it. One question that's come up is, hey, what if we do the planning grant for $200,000 and we want to do 1 year instead of 2 years? What's going to happen is, instead of it being a mid-project and end-of-project report, essentially what you're going to do is just do one big mid-project report that will also serve as your end-of-project, and then you can then transition over to implementation grants at the end of that year, if that makes sense. And we'll be able to help you along the way get that done. These dates, obviously, here's your reporting requirements, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of notice around those pieces. Keep in mind the due dates. They have to be in by April 1st. If it's late, it's done for. You have to wait till next round. If it's incomplete, it's done for. You have to wait till next round. There's really tight turnarounds on this because all of these have to be in front of the state board in May to be approved by the state board. So they're going to be scoring the applications, getting all that done, having the appeals process, and then go from there. So just keep all that in mind as you're doing it. Again, the application is not super crazy intense. So it could be done in a short time period, but it's not designed to be done in a short time period. It's designed to be done in collaboration with the main interest holders in your community and with our locals. Different pieces here. There's going to be, there's an online questionnaire. It's literally kind of like a fancy Google form where you submit information, kind of type in your data, do all those things. There's going to be the abstract, the budget, all the pieces. I mean, for the folks who have done grants before, districts, they know how to do all this stuff. I would just make sure that you're side by side with them as you're discussing it to make sure that we actually get the right pieces in there as you're moving along. And then here's the actual link to the questionnaire, but nothing too crazy on that piece. Next page, I wanted to call out the evaluation criteria. Keep this in mind, the total score, they're going to do a scoring formula. Again, we do not anticipate the planning grants for cohort 1 for this round to be oversubscribed. So while you will receive a score on this application, the hope is that everyone's going to score, well, assuming they do a good job with it, is going to score an acceptable level to be able to move forward. It's not going to be just, for example, the grant funds that went out in 2020, 2021, I think there was $45 million, and the applications that came in equated to about $150 million. So it's super oversubscribed. This won't be the case for this round, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have high quality applications coming in, and we'll kind of get to that. One thing that I just want to call out, just so folks are aware, because you know how much data has changed over time, that the data components that they're going to be using for this one are going to be the 18-19 data for total enrollment, unduplicated pupil count. One question that has come up is saying, hey, that's great, you're using this data, but my school today looks different than it did 3 years ago. If that's the case, and say like today you're over the 80% or today you're over the 50% for your LEA and you weren't then within your applications, you make that argument, and then they help to move you through the process. They don't want this to be something that takes people out, but they just wanted to have it back when there was some stable enrollment data before the COVID pandemic started. So again, if you have questions, please jump in. All this information again is where the data sources will come from. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to jump over to page 22. So again, just stop me if you have a question.
Efrain, there is one question from Gina from San Lorenzo.
Shoot.
Yeah, maybe we'll get.
Yeah.
Gina, you want to ask your question?
I'm actually getting my question answered already. Thank you.
Beautiful. Great.
Perfect. The teamwork there. For 22, for page 22, just wanted to call out again, here's all the components of it. There's going to be a fair amount of work needs to be done, but again, nothing that can be overcome. If you're like me in college, you used to wait till the last minute. I mean, you still could get this done, but again, we don't recommend that because you want to have your folks engaged. The questionnaire, this piece right here is pretty fascinating in terms of what they're asking here. So they're going to ask every single LEA to answer these questions. So just for example, you need to select one option. So plan to support multiple site-based community schools, either as multiple schools within one LEA or multiple schools across a consortium of LEAs. Yes, no, undecided. They're going to ask you to be on the record for all these things. And that's going to be important for us to understand that. So as our local, knowing what the district's saying, preferably, preferably working with them to answer these questions. But worst case, if they try to elbow you out, at least you'll have on the record what they're saying they're going to do and what's happening, and whether they're committing to doing the work, they've already started the work, or they're already doing really well with this work, which I know we can all argue back and forth on that piece. So all these questions they have to ask, have to answer related to the 4 pillars, and this is kind of where you begin to get those teeth in terms of the commitments they're making. And if they make these commitments and then don't follow through, then that's where you can get in trouble and not be able to move on to implementation grants. Obviously, we want folks to be able to do that, but we only want them to do that if they're going to be true to the implementation of the 4 pillars for community schools to really move this forward. These questions go on for like 4 pages, so I'm going to kind of scroll through a bit, and then I'm going to jump over to the rubric just to quickly show you that, and then answer any questions folks have. So hopefully everyone's seen how this is, it's a relatively straightforward piece, but there are a couple of still fuzzy components that we're working on here. So I'm going to jump over to the rubric now, just so folks can have, oh, sorry, I missed this piece. So right here is where the superintendent or the designee is going to say, I assure that the LEA applying for the planning grant does not have any existing community schools as defined by California Community School Ed Code 8900 to 8902, which that essentially means in the statute, they're saying, do you have a community school that fits the definition that's in there, which is the very robust 4-pillar definition of community schools. One question that's come up is like, say you're like for Pomona USD, where you say you already have 2 community schools and you have 1 via LACO. Do they meet the definition of a community school within the Ed Code? All the different facets of it, all the pillars of it, yes or no? And then the comfort level of your district to say, hey, you know what? We have something called a community school, but it's not truly in terms of implementation and the efficacy of it as defined by statute. Then okay, boom, sign here, say it, and go. Now, some folks are more comfortable with that, some folks won't be. So we are, again, working really hard to get that clarity on who's eligible for what, and we're trying to get those answers right away. And then, sorry, I'm jumping over to the rubric real fast on page 32. And this is all available online, but here, again, here's a scoring rubric. Part of it's gonna be just the data, and then we're gonna jump into the answers. So when you do the questionnaire, you're committing to at least 10 of the questionnaire items, which are the things we just went through, to at least 8 to 6, etc. Our goal is to make sure that folks who are funded always fall in the outstanding to strong. Again, they likely won't be oversubscribed, so we're working with the CD to say, hey, listen, even if you aren't oversubscribed, people down in minimal or good shouldn't be getting this. It should be outstanding strong, and we want bigger commitments from folks. So these all are just kind of go through each of these rubrics. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of information within this, but if folks do their homework and if they work collaboratively, this should be a pretty successful application process. And obviously, we want to see as many folks achieving the planning grant as possible, so that we then see community schools, kind of saturate the state as much as possible, but only through the vision of those 4 pillars. So from there, I think that's it on this RFA. Happy to ask or to answer any questions folks have. There are some FAQs. They're not, I don't want to be rude, but they're not super helpful at this point, but we're working to get those tightened up with the CDE to get that done. So I'm happy to jump in if there are questions.
Great. I'm not seeing any questions right now that haven't been answered. You seem to have answered them. And this will, by the way, this will not be the last chance you'll have to answer them, ask questions. Just wait another minute, and then I want to talk. We're going to transition.
Hello, this is Sayuri from Oakland, and I'm on the executive board. I was wondering, I feel like this is being presented as if maybe people in this space are the ones applying. Is that the case?
Great clarification. Right.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
Maybe let me take a shot at it, Efrain, because it's not a technical question, right? your district has got to apply for this, right? Your district, and I said that on the outset, like we're sharing this information so people have this information, because without this, people are more likely to be acted upon by a district who just holds information close to them. Your district themselves, the LEA, they have to apply. That's where the money goes. Our work is when we ever go talk to the districts that we've already done. We've started a process of, first of all, getting our members on board with this. We've thought about how we're going to connect to the community. And if you're doing a planning grant, you have the next year to kind of work that stuff out. But it's really about creating space. So when you go to the district, you say, we intend to be part of this. We know something about this. We want an MOU that we're part of this, and you can get the MOUs from our website. But yeah, you're right. This is not our job to apply for this. The districts themselves, this is why you have, bureaucracy, not in a bad way, but this is why you have folks who this is their full-time job, is to do exactly these kind of grants.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying.
I see a question about what is the definition of a rural school?
So per the RFA, it's defined, it's on page 18 of the RFA, it's defined by the LEA's locale code, and it's a general geographic indicator that describes the type of area where a school district and school site is located. So they rely on the U.S. Census Bureau.
Right. One of the things on rural schools that we're recognizing is that we know it'll be a very different model for rural schools. And there may be some work where districts and local unions work across locals to actually do that. And that's something that we're really interested in uplifting those models. We're learning from other states who have had rural community schools. So Jim, if this is something that you're going to be interested in engaging with, please do let us know too. We have Christopher Boucher is on stack.
Thank you, David. Yeah, my question gets back to the beginning of the presentation where you talked about thresholds for applications based on unduplicated pupil counts or receiving concentration grants, whatever those thresholds are. So I represent some districts that don't necessarily fall into those categories. So is there a different application process for them, or are they completely shut out of a chance to get any of the money available for the community schools program from the state?
Yeah, it's going to be the same application process for them, but the reality is going to be if they don't reach any of those thresholds as an LEA, if they have schools that reach thresholds of 80% or higher, or the other components there of suspension, dropout, et cetera, if they reach those, then the LEA can apply on behalf of that school. If none of their schools reach those thresholds, then they don't really have access to this funding at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks?
David, one thing I forgot to mention is the Implementation Grant Rfa. It's supposed to come out today. Now it's going to be tomorrow. The RFA is going to be similar in terms of a lot of the demographic information as the RFA that we just showed you. They're going to have a much probably broader budget piece, broader narrative piece, and more questions being asked. But we'll make sure to share that information as well for folks who are going after implementation grants.
So here's what we're going to do now, and it's good. We're a little ahead of schedule, and we're likely end early, and folks will be able to get home and spend time with family and friends earlier. But we do really believe if we want to say this is a bottom-up model of community schools, that we have to model that in everything we do, including these Zoom. So we want to have people have a chance to kind of talk to each other and answer questions and bring up issues. So we're going to have, I think, 3 different breakout groups. And you're going to select, and Monica Tamarat is going to really help us actually facilitate this breakout, getting into breakout groups. So the first group is going to be a group of people who they know they've already got some existing community schools. They likely already got state money for this. They're already on this model. They're already moving down this train. Either they probably got state money this last year for it. There was a small group of locals who did. And so they're going to be applying for an implementation grant whenever that comes out. So that's going to be the first breakout group. Again, we expect that to be a much smaller group. because most places where they're saying they have community schools do not really meet the definition of community schools, and they haven't received state money for it, so they can actually apply for a planning grant. The second group, and probably the much bigger group, is going to be folks that are planning grant folks. And that group, Aisha and Efrain are going to be in that group to both answer your questions. Efrain about some of the language of the planning grant, and Aisha about some of the work around actually organizing around it. So that's the second group. The third group is Michael and Brian, and they're going to be there, and that group, the third group is kind of like, I'm not even sure my district is going to apply for any grant this time, but I want to know a little bit more about it. And then maybe in the fall, what are some steps I could start taking so that in the fall we could start to be ready for that? So it's implementation, probably much smaller group of people are already on this path. Second group is planning grant. And the third group is, I want to know more about it, but we're not there yet. Okay, so that's where we're at. I think Monica is going to tell us how to do that and where we go. Okay, great. So group one, is that right, Monica? Group one is implementation, group two is planning, and group three is we're still figuring this out.
Yep, and the breakout rooms are open, so you can go ahead and click into them. I see folks already in them. And if you need some help getting into them, then let me know and I could assign you. Folks are going in though, so that's great. David, I'm supposed to be in the implementation group right now. Can you go ahead and jump into that until I could get everyone into the groups?
I'll do that right now. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. And
and Monica, I'm group 2, right?
yep, I just bumped you in there. Debbie, do you need me to put you into the planning?
You know what? I was gonna just chat with you. I'm gonna have to be leaving. I hope that's that okay. I
Of course.
apologize.
Thank you for joining and juggling everything. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon.
Yes, have a great day.
You too. All right. I'm going to go into a group. Okay, Romalda, you holding it down. Laura, do you need some help though?
I do. I had chatted with you. I just stepped away for a bio break and I'm not sure which breakout room I should join.
Okay, I'm going to put you in 3 then.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Telly, Chris, do you all want to just go to 3? That's the still learning group.
What are you trying to say?
I'll hang out here for a little bit. I just want to make sure that my member, Claudia Bautista, do you know which group you want to go to?
Oh yeah, Claudia.
Maybe she stepped away.
I'm so sorry. I'm on a call. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'm going to go field implementation question.
Okay.
Someone, Tammy?
Sure. I'll call on Ian.
Hey, how you doing? So, Associate Promoter Teachers, Ian Sheila. I started community schools in Pomona with Kyle Surratt. I had a steering committee. Everything was set about 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, and then we got a new union president who ended up doing some nefarious stuff. Somebody who might refuse to work and somebody who refused to pursue and the stuff that we're doing, including community schools. And so everybody kind of dropped the ball in community schools. The school district could use the community schools funds, the community schools people for ancillary work that they were doing as far as attendance and keep track. They did do a lot of counseling. They did a lot of home visitations. They did do some stuff that's community schools related. But we're now we're reorganizing our union more or less after this fiasco, and I'm back to bringing community schools back together. I've got community members involved. I got community organizations involved. I got board members involved. I got the schools writing the planning grant. I reconnected with Kyle, and so I'm starting to be optimistic about the process again.
Right. Great. You know, Monica, will you tell us how much time we have here? Because
We have 25 minutes.
okay, so I think if we could maybe we'll just say name and local. How about that? Because I'm realizing we may run out of time on just the check-ins.
Hi, I'm Gina Spears. I'm from San Lorenzo Educators Association, and we are having a similar situation where there was a community school and we didn't know that.
Got it. Looks like Chris Cohen next.
Chris Cohen from Pittsburgh Education Associations, and same thing. We have 2 community schools that nobody knows about. So, and I was just talking to Rosemary, like I saw in the documentation as they were going through it that you can't qualify for more community schools if the community schools you currently have meet some funding ed code blank thing. And so I want to find out how if our schools, if those community schools meet that criteria or they don't meet that criteria. So therefore, then we can apply for 2 more schools to be community schools.
Okay. Keith, you want to go? I see you next on my thing, at least.
Sure. Keith Brown, Oakland Education Association president, but released. I'm a Bret Hart middle school teacher, and I'm happy to have one of my Bret Hart colleagues here in the room also.
Nice. Okay. You want to call on your colleague?
Yes, Sai.
Hello, I'm Sayuri and I go by Sai. And I guess I've been participating with the California Partnership for Learning, who's been helping shape the policy around all of the community schools grant stuff. So I've been participating, I guess, through Pico, California. So I'm happy to be here to hear how we're moving it on this end. I'll call on Rosemary.
Hey everyone, good to see you. I'm Rosemary Louis Saint, CTA staff in Concord. I am here as I support my Pittsburgh district through the process of getting community schools. Chris is working really hard at that, and I appreciate that. So we're working together to do our best. Good to see everyone.
Right. And Lisa, I think you're the last person. Actually, Monica after you. Yeah, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa Gardner with CTA Communications, and I'm here to learn everything I can about community schools and help get the word out about all the great work that you guys are doing. So thank you for having me.
Monica, do you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Tamrath. I am with the Human Rights Department at CTA, and I'm one of the staff leads on community schools with Paul Badagan, who's the Region 2 manager. And so we support David Goldberg around this and all of y'all, actually. So
Claudia hasn't spoken.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I had to. Our district is going to decide what we're going to do with masking today. And so I was talking to the board members. I apologize for stepping away. I'm with Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District, and we have one community school, which is Santa Monica High School. And I think it's been now 2 years, so it's being implemented. But again, I'm completely new to it, and they're basically focusing on the wraparound services and mental health needs, especially around COVID. So I'm just here to learn how I can use some of that funding, hopefully, to help my colleagues who want to detract classes.
So let me do a little, I see, oh, David Greenberg, would you like to introduce yourself too?
Hey, thanks, David. Dave Greenberg from formerly living in New Mexico right now, but with NEA now, and just excited about the opportunity in California. So thanks for letting me listen in.
Yeah, great. So let me do, after I talked about how bottom up we want to make this, let me just information dump for a minute. Because I think I'm hoping it'll be helpful for you all. You all are in a really bad place. And we were hoping to have had clarity. Well, I say you all. Keith and Cy, you're in a different place but most of these other folks are in a situation where their county applied for the state and got county funding for a community school. And so now the state is saying you have to do, there's different ways of looking at this. And I want to be honest with you, there's a struggle going inside within the California Department of Education about what you need to apply for. We were hoping to have clarity. You deserved clarity. We deserve clarity. That should have happened by now. You can't put out an RFA with less than a month to apply and not have so that's bad. It's really bad. We had heard that they were deciding that because your county had applied and not your district itself, your district could apply for a planning grant. We've been encouraging people to apply for planning grants because then you have a year to have these struggles with the district, right? To kind of build power, to get support from us, get support from Rosemary, but also take part, Pittsburgh, for example, can connect with Oakland. Oakland has been in a similar situation where they had a bunch of community schools and they're really now trying to put the community in community schools. They've actually been doing that work. And maybe in a second, Keith, you can share about that, about what you've been doing. But you all, there is no clarity. And I want to be honest with you, so I guess this is being, we're told, worked out amongst CDE. We're going to get, I were to advise you something right now, I would say have your district apply for a planning grant because that gives us time to fight this out. There may be a way where you apply, even though you apply for an implementation grant, you're still going to have those struggles. At the end of the day, the struggles are going to be the same. The district is going to do whatever the hell they want, and the county will if we don't organize around this. And so, again, I want to, Keith and Oakland are in a little bit different place because they've actually, they've been part of the Institute, and they've been kind of taking some leads actually around organizing, going door to door, even with parents around this. Maybe in a second, I'll call on Keith to share about that, if you're okay with that, Keith, and maybe Cy, if you've been part of that as well. I guess the one question, Chris, I want to answer for you, you had a specific question. Even if your district had applied for a community school and got it, your county had, there's nothing that says you can't apply for more community schools. So that in fact, they're going to have three rounds of implementation grants. It's unlikely that by the third year there will be money, right? Because it's a lot of money, but it's going to be struggles around this money. But you could apply, for example, and the second round is going to happen likely in the fall, very quickly. So if your district got it together and you were able to get on a terrain where you could say we want to do a planning grant now, or if you say we want to still struggle around this, we're going to do an implementation grant in the fall. Those are some possibilities. Again, I just want to keep bringing right into the middle of this issue of power, because without that dynamic, the district's going to do whatever they want. And a year from us, we'll be on another Zoom where we said, now the district added 4 more and we're still not part of this, right? So if I could, if you all are okay, maybe I can let Keith and perhaps I don't know if you've been, how involved you've been, you maybe been very involved, maybe you're a leader of it, but I want to give room for both you all if you want to share about some of the efforts going on in Oakland around where they already had community schools and how you're in name and how you've really been trying to organize around that.
Yeah, thank you, David. OEA, we are a part of the NEA Community Schools Institute, and with the support of NEA, we've have a community schools grant where we were able to use that to release one of our members, Kampala Tays Ransford, as a community schools organizer, and we built a coalition in Oakland with parent groups such as Justice for Oakland Students, with Parent Voices, Bay Area Plan, And out of that work, built a coalition, Reparations for Black Students, which is really pushing for the district to be true in its commitment of being a thriving community schools district. And we were able to do canvassing, door knock Black parents and in Oakland, and hear about what parents' visions are for thriving community schools. And that's really helped us in our efforts of organizing around community schools and defending our schools from school closures. I'm also really excited that in OEA also that we are launching a bargaining campaign, and we're looking at bargaining for the common good, where parents and communities are partners with us at the bargaining table, and that we're putting forth demands around community schools in our bargaining. And we're inspired by the work that Los Angeles has done in winning community schools through bargaining. So that's just some of the things happening in Oakland. And I know, and actually, Sai is being very humble. She's, a member of our executive board and just an important organizer with working with parents and faith leaders. And she really was instrumental in educating me around things such as community schools and programs such as parent homeschool visits.
Thank you. I would want, for those in the Bay Area too, inside, maybe it looks like you want to speak to it. I just want to put up one other district too who's doing great work, is Richmond is also on this. So again, another district, another union that you all could connect with. Sai, what would you share about your work? Yeah.
I just wanted to lift up our community or some of our other community partners. So for example, I've done work actually in Sacramento, and then now I'm in Oakland, but worked with Pico, California, for those of you who know what that is. It's like the faith-based organizers. And so with Pico, California, and Public Advocates and Californians for Justice, those three groups, they're our core partners in the California Partnership for Learning. I think there's a longer name. And so they've really been instrumental in pushing some of the actual language in, the RFA stuff that's been coming out, and really working with the CDE. And so they actually wrote a letter and sent it to our district people on behalf, of kind of Oakland, our Oakland community schools. And they sent a very, strong letter to our district admin people, who are the community schools, district people who are going to have to do this whole process, basically calling them out and saying, where's the community engagement and all these other things. And so I just wanted to lift up how important the community partners are, and to really, like Keith was saying, all of our community partners are so instrumental in making our schools happen, but then also moving forward with the process.
So let's open it up. We just I just wanted to get that example out there, because there's amongst you, there is an example of folks who they're in a little bit different place in Oakland, where they really are kind of already spent a year or two now trying to reclaim them, something that you all are trying to talk about. Any questions that you have for each other? Any,
Sorry, David, Gina has her hand up.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing that. I'm sorry. Gina, yes.
Hi. So I wanted to just talk about like the immediate future right now, because time is of the essence for us, right? So we have one elementary school that was receiving money as a grant to be a community school. We are wanting to add 2 more schools to that. Nobody at the elementary school knew that it was a community school, which is apparently a familiar story. So my concern is that, you know, as you said, we don't want to do something that's slapdash and, you know, come up but we don't seem to be eligible for the planning grants. Am I correct in that? Or we just
No, that's the issue. I said there was a big, we don't have
Okay.
clarification, and
Right.
that's
So
that's bad.
in lieu of in light of not having the clarification, if we applied for the planning grant,
Right.
and then it was determined that we were not eligible for the planting grant, would that somehow make us not eligible for the implementation grant?
In this particular year. So I think there's going to be, remember, there's going to be 3 rounds of implementation grants. So because this is on them, I don't know what they're going to do, to be honest with you. If they're going to call your district administrator. Yeah.
That's not my question.
No, I think I got you.
Yeah. So I mean,
Can't apply for both is what you're asking. You cannot apply for planning and implementation for the same year. If you're told you could not, if you apply for planning and they said you shouldn't have done that, I don't know if they'll call you up, your district up, and say switch it to implementation, or they'll say the next round do implementation.
I mean, are they gonna? Well, okay.
So
Does that answer your question?
Not in a way I like, but yes.
yeah, and actually earlier today, David mentioned that the CDE is having their own webinars to field these questions, and they might not actually have the answers either, but we would love for y'all to actually go to the CDE and ask them these questions, right? Because, you know, obviously after this, we're going to go to the CDE and be like, this is what we're hearing from our chapters, right? Like I could share that information of their webinar as well. So, and their webinar is going to be tomorrow, right? So tomorrow morning we just heard about it like 2 days ago. So yes, but we'll send it over.
Morning or afternoon, do you know?
9 a.m. So I see Tammy's hand up now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if everyone here is in the same situation. David, you suggested that if the county office had applied for the planning, we as districts could apply for the planning.
You are a county, right?
If I am a county, I have no district. They're my home.
You have to apply. You all have to apply for implementation.
Okay. That's what
Other
that's
folks,
like.
the county, you know, they're districts that the county applied on their behalf, but you are a county district, so you have to apply for it.
But Tammy, I also feel you too, right? Because like you're a county that has this grant, and what I've heard about San Diego County is that they haven't used the resources necessarily for community school, but they've used it for like other really important services, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah,
when
that's it.
Ephraim was going over the grant, like it was specific, right? Funds are not supposed to be used to supplant other services, which kind of, from what y'all are telling us, that kind of happened with your 2020 grant.
Right. And then we also are now aware that the counties are going to be going after a second grant, which allows them to oversee community schools. And it really concerns me that our county would be applying for a grant to oversee community schools when they've really misinterpreted the first grant. And I'm wondering if there's any way that they can be held accountable for that. Like, how can they go for this oversight grant if they're not actually implementing in the, I don't know, I'm just really confused by it.
Yeah, I'm totally writing this down, Tammy. And I don't know if David has a better response.
Yeah, so what Tammy's referencing is that there's going to be county, there's going to be regional community school hubs, and some of the counties are going to apply for state money to kind of be the regional assistance folks. And that what an irony is that we're also, by the way, there's going to be a statewide training component. We're very actively pushing for folks from the UCLA Community Schools program to do that lead statewide. It's something we've been in. We've now got them. They had to be connected with a county. They're going to be connected with a county. and then they're going to apply. They are oriented in this way to bottom up way and really teacher voice and parent and student voice. So that's how we are. I think on the county level, there's no way to go around the counties. That's how the state operates. They go to counties as being kind of their field folks. But on the statewide effort, we're really trying to get UCLA community schools folks to actually be the lead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that mechanism can be used to kind of hold counties accountable, not only in terms of their oversight of other community schools, but in terms of the way they're implementing community schools within their own counties. Because how can you lead if you're not actually implementing the way it should be implemented? And we're going to continue. I mean, they're not uncollaborative folks. It's just that I think educational typically is top down, and folks don't even realize how top down it is. So I think it's just kind of bringing awareness to the fact that it shouldn't have happened this way. And we are getting a lot of support from Kyle in San Diego. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Other folks?
I think Ian had his hand up.
Okay, Ian.
Yeah, I'm really befuddled by, LA County Office of Education starting community schools. And I'm quite frankly disturbed by that. I really think that they have no business doing that. They don't know the community. I mean, I can see how they might play a supervisory role, but the other thing I get is that, this is in the beginning and people are trying to figure out, where they are and how we're going to, kind of have some kind of a bureaucratic process in this whole thing, but I don't think LACO has any business in being in schools in my district, running community schools. To whom can I complain about that?
You should talk to your county.
I don't know anybody over there. So, David,
No, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think the phone number. I'll razz them. I don't care, but that's not a problem. I'll get on them. That's not an issue. I just don't know who to call.
Yeah. It's a good
question. You tell me, I'll call them all day.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
I'll follow up with you.
Yeah. And I think it's going to need to happen. I think we're going to need to think about how we do it across union locals to actually have the power to take it on. Yeah, it's very likely, by the way, Ian, that LA County, as bad as they are, is going to actually try to be the statewide trainers against UCLA. And so it's another case where the bad actors actually elevate it.
Wow.
So it's similar to our last question too, where the counties are really trying to, yeah.
Thanks. Not very encouraging.
So let me, I know we're going to, and I don't want to end on a not encouraging note, but I think we're going to demand, if you would like to, we'll be in touch with you all specifically around this county issue, because it's not fair to you all, really, the position you're in. I mean, the last note I got from the CDE is that if you, and Claudia, I know you have your hand up, we'll get right to you afterwards too, that if your county is willing to, there's an attestation as part of the application where they say we don't have existing community schools as per the state ed code. If they would sign that, and then they could probably apply for a planning grant, right? And they would say that we actually don't, because these are county run schools. These are not run by us. That's the kind of latest advice we're getting from them. So that, I don't know if superintendents are going to be willing to do that. Either way, even if you do apply for an implementation grant, frankly, it's still going to be a lot of the same struggle, right? Around really getting folks involved. Like to Gina, your question, if you say we have 2 schools already identified, one thing that NEA is really stressed with us is that no school can be identified unless they themselves vote for it, right? That we want to make this democratic. We want the school members, whether it's the faculty, could be however you see that happening, that they themselves should vote before anyone applies on their behalf as part of this. Yeah. Claudia, you have your hand up, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Ian's point, what they are doing is, as far as I can see, is basically paying for their people to come and observe the school. And it took them about a year for them to even figure out who the key players were, et cetera. So it's really about paying their salaries throughout this. I mean, as a teacher there who's very, very involved, I was never pulled into any of those meetings. So it really does speak to what Ian is saying, that it is completely been taken over and it's not really authentically the school's program.
Yeah. The last thing I'll start where we ended too from our prior session, that we intend to, for example, I think Rosemary's already gone to a training on this community schools, perhaps that Monica did. We really intend to really support your staff. We have Esperanza here, who's an incredible staff and actually community schools trainer or coach in LA Unified. We're really trying to build up infrastructure. So this will not be the last you hear from us around this. We want to start meeting perhaps regionally and start strategizing and learning how we take this stuff on. Esperanza, do you want to introduce yourself real quickly? I think you came on after we did introductions.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Esperanza Martinez. I'm the community school coach for LAUSD and UTLA. Super excited to be here with you all, awaiting the implementation RFA.
I think the planning grant folks needed more time. I was not notified.
You know, it's weird. My message did not say 2 minutes. It was like, you've been meeting 30. Maybe I just missed one piece of it, but I saw 30 minutes. So when Kyle was like, oh no, we still got 30 minutes. We're good. We still got time.
So are we all back in? Looks like we're all back in the big group, right?
There were 65 participants earlier. Now there's 39.
Maybe there's one more group. Yeah.
I think folks just dropped off. Yeah.
So folks, thank you all for being here. And the group I was in, I just want to share that there's a lot of excitement and a lot of frustration. And I guess it's frustrating for us wanting to support you around this, that this is going to be a hard process. Again, I do want to recommit to you all that CTA, that we're really working, and that we have you saw a bunch of staff here today, with a bunch of leaders here today. I want to, you met some of the staff. I don't know if the staff want to, Monica, let me introduce you. And I don't know if Paul is on here as well, then maybe you can introduce some of the other folks or just say who they are. I want to at least have people know this is a big process we're actually doing. We don't expect this is going to be the last time we connect. Our goal is to actually move some of this work into our regions. You'll hear from us shortly, even as we get more information. For example, we know there's some county folks who want information about this dilemma around implementation versus planning grant. We also know we're going to have to really get out the word. We're all waiting excitedly around this implementation grant to even come out. Let me turn over to Monica for one moment, who's also going to talk. She can tell us some of the other staff who are working here, besides some of the great board members I see here. And Monica, you can maybe share about the follow-up survey as well, if you could.
Yeah, hi everyone. Again, I'm Monica Tamrath. I'm not sure if my brother Paul Barragan is still here. I think he was juggling a service center council meeting as well. But we are working with an incredible group of leaders and also other staff cross-departmentally, and then also with the field. And so just want to really lift up, y'all probably have met them already, either as speakers or even in your breakout groups. So I know the folks here, I'm just seeing Brian Guerrero from IPD. He comes out of Region 3. So I think Aisha brings him along to all the LACO meetings and all of the meetings around in Region 3. And Aisha is the lead on Region 3, and she's in the Human Rights Department. I think I see Michael Flores Castaneda was also on here. He's been doing all the Zoom spotlighting. He's like a production director right now. So Michael is actually also from the Human Rights Department and the lead in Region 2. You also probably saw Lisa, who is from CTA Communications, also based out of Region 2. Ephraim from Government Relations is also based out of Region 2. Not here today from Region 2 is Seth Bramble, who's also from Government Relations. And then Region 4, I saw David Partida here. He's the lead in Region 4, and he comes to us from CTA's Center for Organizing and Bargaining. And then in Region 1, I think Memo wasn't able to join us, but Memo is our lead in Region 1, and he's also from the Center for Organizing and Bargaining. We also have folks from our charter team who's been supporting us. So Muni has been hopping in, we have a ton of really awesome field staff. I just saw that Lisa from Anaheim jumped on. I saw Rosemary from Region 1. Any other staff? Esperanza from UTLA has been super supportive as well. And then we also even have a ton of our NEA staff who have been supporting us nationally. So I know Kyle Surrett was just on this, David Greenberg, who we will be checking in with to support our rural chapters because he comes from New Mexico. I'm not sure if Anna Grant is on here. I think that's kind of the staff team. Yes, and Stephanie Tellez and Greg and Ben, other field staff who are on. Thank you so much for joining. I know Ben and Greg are definitely going to help us build our rural chapter work.
Missy too from NEA. Thanks, Missy, for being here.
Yeah, so is NEA folks as well. Yeah, so there's a bunch of staff here who are all committed to serving you in this effort. There's also a bunch of elected leaders from the CTA board here tonight. And most importantly, there are a bunch of presidents here who are also committed to kind of working with you and supporting each other around this. So Monica, if you want, I guess she's going to put the stuff, we want to get some surveys, know how this went for you. Also allows us to follow up with you if there's specific issues you want follow up on. Monica may put those in the chat, but we'll also probably email them to you. I really appreciate you all being here. This is both exciting and hard work, and nothing in education or any time in our life worth attaining is not going to be hard. And the most important thing is I think we have the focus and we have the capacity now. We're building it to support you. Thank you for everyone for being here.